"Get your hands off me. My daughters are right here." Malik's voice cracked through the chaos as he was slammed onto the hard ground. His breath hitched, chest pressed against the cold grass, while his two little girls screamed in terror, their cries piercing the thick silence of the park. "I'm just waiting for my wife," he gasped, struggling beneath the weight of the officers pinning him down. Nearby parents froze, some reaching for their phones, others stepping back uncertainly. Malik's daughters clung to each other, trembling, eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy, please." The older one sobbed, voice breaking. The officers ignored the desperate pleas, their grip tightening as they barked orders with no room for explanation. Malik's heart pounded, not from exertion, but from the sting of disbelief. How had an afternoon in a public park with his children, laughing moments before, spiraled into this nightmare? The scene was a brutal reminder. Suspicion often outweighs truth in the eyes of those who enforce the law. One officer's voice was cold, detached. "We received a report of a suspicious black male hovering near children." Malik's chest rose and fell, breath shallow but steady. "I'm not suspicious. I'm waiting for my wife," he said calmly, trying to break through the tension. "But, you see, sir," another officer said, hand on his holster, "we have to take all reports seriously." The words felt like a sentence, a justification that masked deeper prejudice. Malik's mind raced how quickly assumptions were made. Based on skin color alone, he tried again. "I'm here with my daughters. Look at them." But the officers only exchanged glances, already convinced he was a threat. The invisible barrier of systemic bias closed tighter around him, suffocating and relentless. "Those are my children. Ask them." Malik's voice broke, with desperation as he struggled beneath the officers. His daughters, huddled nearby, continued to wail, clutching at their mother's missing presence. But the police remained unmoved, deaf to his pleas, seeing only a man to control. "Are you on something?" One officer sneered, ignoring the little girls' frightened faces. The psychological toll deepened. Malik wasn't just fighting physical restraint, but the crushing denial of his humanity. His daughter's trauma was etched in every tear and every sob. Malik's heart shattered with each dismissive word. The officer's coldness was a stark contrast to the innocence shattered before them. A family torn apart by prejudice that refused to see past color. Whispers floated through the crowd, phones raised to capture every moment. Some bystanders recorded silently, others exchanged uncomfortable glances, yet no one stepped in. Why is everyone just watching? Malik's silent question echoed louder than any shout. A stranger's voice finally broke through. "He's just with his kids? What are you doing?" But it was drowned in the indifferent hum of onlookers, unsure whether to intervene or look away. This collective inaction underscored a society, too, often paralyzed in the face of injustice. The camera lenses reflected a cruel irony. Moments meant to protect were instead monuments to public humiliation. Malik's pain wasn't only inflicted by officers, it was amplified by a community unwilling to act. Malik's phone buzzed insistently, the screen flashing with the name Serena Williams. His fingers twitched to answer, hope flaring briefly. But before he could reach it, an officer's hand knocked the device from his grasp, sending it skidding across the dirt. "Pick it up," Malik pleaded, voice raw. "That's my wife calling." The refusal to return the phone was more than obstruction. It was a deliberate attempt to silence the lifeline between him and the outside world. The tension thickened. Who was this woman? And why did the officers want to block the connection? The unanswered call became a haunting symbol of Malik's isolation amid mounting injustice. Suddenly, Serena's voice erupted from the speakerphone, sharp and urgent. "Where are my kids? Put him on the phone right now." The crowd stilled. The officers froze in mid-motion, caught off guard by the sudden intensity, Her words cut through the haze of confusion and fear, transforming the atmosphere. The weight of her presence, even heard only through a call, challenged the authority that had so easily assumed guilt. Whispers spread among bystanders. Serena Williams, the tennis legend, demanding answers. The police faltered, hesitation creeping in for the first time. The invisible power dynamic began to shift, opening a crack in the armor of presumption that had kept Malik restrained. Malik lay still, eyes closing slowly, not in surrender, but retreating into himself, seeking refuge from the world's harsh gaze. His face told a story words couldn't capture. The ache of humiliation, the fog of disbelief, the sting of shame mingled with silent resilience around him. The murmurs grew louder, a mix of sympathy and outrage rippling through the crowd. Though the officers held physical control, Malik's spirit flickered quietly beneath the surface, waiting to rise again. The moment lingered, a poignant pause before the story's deeper truths unfold, inviting the audience to feel the weight of systemic injustice before stepping back into Malik's journey. Malik Thomas used to stand in front of packed lecture halls, his voice calm, explaining complex ideas to eager students. But when his daughters were born, something inside him shifted. "I don't want to miss their bedtime stories," Malik said one evening, setting aside his tenure track for sleepless nights and endless questions about the stars. Leaving academia behind wasn't a sacrifice, it was a choice. To be present, to nurture, to guide. Fatherhood became his new passion, and every page read, every scraped knee tended, every lullaby sung was a moment he cherished deeply. He wanted his girls to know him not just as their dad, but as their safe harbor in a world that could be unforgiving. Married to Serena Williams, one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, Malik had every reason to live in the spotlight. Yet he chose quiet. "Fame isn't what defines us," he often reminded himself. Away from cameras and headlines, their life was simple and intentional. While Serena dominated the tennis courts worldwide, Malik carved out a space where his daughters could grow up free from glare, a place where family meant normalcy. He found strength in being the steady rock, the voice of calm in their little universe, choosing love and privacy over public acclaim. Every morning, Malik dropped the girls off at school, backpack straps adjusted with care, their laughter trailing. Behind, at the playground, he read stories under the shade, his voice warm and patient. Yet even in these simple moments, judgment lingered. A mother would glance sideways, clutching her purse tighter. A teacher would direct a question to another parent first, leaving Malik feeling invisible yet scrutinized. "Are you sure he's their dad?" a passerby once whispered. Malik smiled politely, masking the sting beneath. He knew his role wasn't always recognized. To him, being dad first meant standing firm, no matter the doubts cast by others. In the predominantly white circles where parenting groups gathered, Malik was often the exception. Teachers spoke to him last, voices hesitant. Mothers exchanged quick glances, their smiles tight and forced. Once, a woman subtly stepped back as he approached. "I've read your books," Malik said softly at a library reading, "but sometimes I feel like I'm reading between the lines of their suspicion." His calm demeanor and intellect didn't shield him. Instead, they highlighted how society boxed him into a stereotype. A black man always suspects, no matter how refined or composed. The burden was invisible yet heavy, a constant reminder that the rules weren't made for him. The neighborhood was picturesque, manicured lawns, kids biking down quiet streets, neighbors greeting with hello. But beneath the surface, Malik noticed the tension in casual glances, the hesitation behind polite nods. Every double take, every lingering stare felt like silent questions, unspoken doubts. "Welcome," the community said, but guarded, like an invitation with strings attached. It was a subtle, daily reminder that acceptance was conditional. often tied to who he was rather than what he brought to the table. That morning, Malik packed sandwiches, tied his daughter's shoes with practiced patience, and kissed their foreheads. Before heading to the park, the sun shone gently, promising an afternoon of laughter and play, nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what he believed. But as the familiar path unfolded, so did the shadows of the confrontation that awaited. An unexpected storm in an otherwise peaceful day. Malik's daughters chased each other around the swings, their laughter filling the air. A woman approached, her smile tight but polite. "You girls have the sweetest laughs," she said, glancing at Malik. Then, with a carefully measured tone, she added, "Is that your dad?" Malik returned her smile, calm but sensing the weight behind the question. "Yes, I'm their father," he replied evenly. The woman nodded, but her eyes flickered with hesitation, as if trying to place him in a story he didn't belong to. It was a subtle reminder, no matter how present he was, some would always question his place here. From a nearby bench, Malik noticed a white woman watching him intently. Her gaze never wavered, sharp and unreadable. Suddenly, she shifted her child closer to her side, shielding him as if Malik himself was a danger. The movement was silent, but spoke volumes, an unspoken message that he didn't belong in this safe space. Malik swallowed the discomfort, knowing this wasn't about him personally, but about a deeper fear that lingered beneath the surface of everyday interactions. Just as Malik was about to call his daughters over, he caught a flash from across the Elsie Park. A man, phone in hand, appeared to be photographing the playground. But Malik's eyes narrowed. Something about the angle seemed deliberate, aimed not at the children playing, but at him and his family. The man's casual smile did little to mask the invasion. Malik's heart tightened, an instinctive warning that this moment was being captured, judged, maybe weaponized against him. The woman who had pulled her child close leaned forward and whispered urgently to a park ranger passing by. Malik couldn't hear the words, but he sensed the quiet seed of suspicion planted under the guise of concern. The ranger nodded, eyes briefly locking with the woman's before moving on. Whatever was said set something in motion, invisible yet powerful enough to change the course of their day. Minutes later, a white male officer approached, hand resting on the holster of his gun. His gaze locked on Malik with a hard edge before. He uttered a single question. "Sir, what are you doing here?" The tone was less inquiry and more accusation. Malik's calm voice replied, "I'm here with my daughters, just enjoying the park." But the officer's eyes never softened, watching as if waiting for a sign of guilt. This was no longer a casual question. It was a prelude to confrontation, a warning disguised as law enforcement. Before Malik could finish explaining, the officer lifted his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at the park. Possible suspicious individuals with children." Malik's voice broke in. "I'm not suspicious," but his words were drowned out by the static crackle and hurried response. The decision was already made. Backup was en route, and Malik was trapped in a moment where assumptions outweighed truth. His family outing was turning into a crisis, sparked not by actions, but by deeply ingrained prejudice. "Hands off the stroller," Malik shouted, his voice strained but steady, as two officers suddenly lunged toward him. He reached calmly, trying to grab his wallet tucked safely inside the stroller, but before he could move, a heavy hand slammed him to the ground. The sharp scrape of grass against his cheek stung as he struggled under their grip. "Stop resisting," an officer barked, twisting Malik's arm behind his back. His daughters screamed nearby, their tiny voices cracking in terror. Chaos erupted as Malik fought to stay composed, his heart pounding not from the fall, but from the shock that this peaceful day had shattered in an instant. "Daddy, what are they doing to you?" The younger daughter's cry pierced the thick silence that had fallen over the stunned onlookers. Malik lay face down, cold metal biting into his wrists as handcuffs clicked tight. His chest heaved with controlled breaths, but the anguish in his daughter's faces was raw and unmistakable. Parents nearby froze, unsure whether a crime was unfolding or if injustice was being carried out in broad daylight. The officers said nothing, their cold eyes refusing to meet the terrified children who clung desperately to each other, watching their father vanish behind a veil of suspicion and force. A sharp voice cut through the stunned silence. "He's with his kids. Are you behind?" A woman shouted, pulling out her phone to record the scene. Her words sparked murmurs among the crowd-quiet judgments stirring, eyes darting between the officers and the restrained man. Attention thickened, the air heavy with the first signs of public dissent. Cameras clicked, voices whispered, and the oppressive weight of witnessing injustice settled on everyone present. For a moment, the officers were no longer just enforcers. They were the center of growing scrutiny. Just then, a man stepped forward, a white father clutching his child's hand. "Look, I thought he was acting suspicious," he admitted hesitantly, eyes avoiding Malik's. His words, innocent to him, fed the officer's growing bias like fuel to a fire. "See, you can't be too careful these days," he added with a nervous chuckle. That small endorsement of doubt gave the police the confirmation they needed, escalating the tension as Malik's presence was further questioned not by facts, but by fearful assumptions. It was a brutal reminder of how easily prejudice finds. All eyes, pinned under the officer's weight, Malik's voice broke through the mounting hostility. "My wife is Serena Williams," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I'm telling you, I'm their father." The police exchanged dismissive glances, smirking like he was deluded. "Yeah, right," one scoffed. "What's next? You're the king of the court too?" The humiliation cut deeper than the restraints. His truth was discarded as a joke, proof that racial bias didn't care about identity or reputation only. Suspicion dot suddenly, Malik's phone buzzed repeatedly. One officer snatched it and pressed a button with a smug grin. "Put it on speaker," he said. "Let's hear this, Serena." The park fell silent as the call connected. Then, booming through the speaker came Serena's unmistakable voice, fierce, commanding, angry. "Where the hell is my husband? Where are my daughters? Put him on the phone right now." The room seemed to hold its breath. The power in her. Words shattered the heavy tension, forcing everyone to listen, to acknowledge. The officers stiffened. The cocky sneers faded, replaced by confused glances and whispered questions. "Wait, Serena who?" One muttered under his breath. Around them, the crowd started piecing it together. Whispers rose like ripples across water. The reality of who Malik was and the gravity of what they'd done began sinking in. The moment stretched, heavy with disbelief and rising embarrassment. The arrogance of power was cracking, exposed by a single name. From down the street, a sleek black SUV pulled up smoothly. The doors opened, and Serena stepped out, no glamour, no pretense, just raw determination and fire burning in her eyes. Her workout gear was a stark contrast to the polished injustice unfolding. Her daughters broke free from the crowd, running to her sobbing, seeking safety and strength. Serena's arrival was a seismic shift, a sudden, undeniable force that changed everything in that moment. That Serena marched forward, voice sharp and unwavering. "Get your hands off my husband," she demanded, standing firm between Malik and the officers. The crowd fell into a stunned hush as the balance of power tilted. For the first time that day, the police hesitated, caught in the glare of truth and defiance. This confrontation marked the beginning of the turning point, a fight not just for Malik's dignity, but for justice itself. Serena's voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. "Uncuff him right now." The crowd fell silent, eyes locked on the fierce determination in her tone. No hesitation, no doubt, just an unwavering command. Officers glanced at each other, caught off guard by her presence and the sudden shift in energy. Malik's daughters clung to her side, hope flickering in their tear-streaked faces. Serena stepped forward, every word dripping with authority. The balance had begun to tip. Her voice sharpened, controlled but fierce. You tackled my husband right here, in front of our daughters on what? A hunch? The officers stiffened, struggling to justify their reckless behavior. We were responding to a call, one muttered, eyes avoiding hers. A call based on suspicion, not facts, Serena shot back. That doesn't give you the right to humiliate a father. The air grew thick with tension as the crowd absorbed the raw injustice laid bare. Without pause, Serena pulled out her phone. I'm recording everything. The whole world will see this. Phones flicked on all around her, bystanders, neighbors, strangers, everyone capturing the moment in real time. Her voice narrated the unfolding truth, relentless and unfiltered. This isn't just about my family. It's about every black parent facing this daily nightmare. The power of digital witnesses began to swell, a new force challenging the old guard. One officer finally stammered, voice shaky. Ma'am, we were just responding to a report. His words faltered under Serena's piercing gaze. The certainty that once surrounded them wavered, replaced by defensiveness and unease. The facade of control started crumbling, revealing the fragility beneath their authority. The crowd sensed it, holding their breath for what would come next. Metal clicked open. Malik's wrists were free, but his body still trembled, the humiliation etched deep in his posture. His daughters reached for him, and he gathered them close, swallowing the sting of dignity lost. I'm here, he whispered, voice rough but steady. The release was symbolic, but the wounds remained fresh, a harsh reminder that freedom is sometimes just the beginning. Within moments, clips of the incident exploded across social media, sparking outrage and urgent conversations. Hashtags trended, voices amplified, and countless viewers demanded accountability. Malik's story was no longer confined to the park. It had ignited a digital movement. The power of viral exposure was undeniable, forcing institutions to reckon. With the harsh spotlight, amid the growing crowd, a woman slipped quietly away, the one who had made the false report. But a sharp-eyed bystander caught her face on camera, holding her accountable in a way no silence could erase. The ripple of accountability began to spread beyond the officers, hinting at a broader reckoning on the horizon. Serena's voice hardened as she spoke into the phone on speaker. This will not be buried. This is systemic. This is war. Her words carried the weight of fierce resolve. No backing down, no forgiveness. She made clear that the fight wasn't just personal, but a battle against a deeply ingrained injustice that demanded change. The line crackled with determination, a rallying cry echoing far beyond the park. A gentle voice broke through the tension. A black mother stepped forward, offering Malik a quiet nod. You handled that with more grace than I ever could, she said softly. The solidarity in her eyes spoke volumes, reminding everyone of the strength found in community and shared pain. It was a moment of healing amidst the storm. Cameras kept rolling, voices grew louder, and the officers' once solid grip faltered. Their posture shifted from confidence to caution, eyes darting nervously as they sensed the tide turning. The narrative was no longer theirs to control. The crowd's energy surged, the scales tipping toward justice and accountability. This was no longer just an arrest. It was the beginning of a reckoning. The police department released a statement that barely scratched the surface. We acknowledge the incident and are reviewing our procedures. It read, carefully avoiding any admission of wrongdoing. No mention of systemic bias. No recognition of the trauma inflicted. It was a rehearsed response, tone-deaf and dismissive. Behind those words lay the persistent refusal to confront deep-rooted injustice, reminder that real change would demand more than empty phrases. Serena's voice broke through the noise in a heartfelt video. Malik isn't just my partner, he's the safest place our children know. A father who shows up, loves fiercely, and protects without fail. Her words carried the weight of truth and vulnerability, humanizing Malik beyond the headlines and viral clips. This story isn't about suspicion or fear. It's about love, family, and the courage it takes to be a black father in America. Her message resonated, reminding everyone what was truly at stake. The story quickly transcended social media, drawing voices from all corners, celebrities, activists, and everyday parents standing together against racial injustice. Tweets, posts, and calls for reform surged as communities united in shared outrage and empathy. The momentum grew, transforming Malik's experience into a rallying cry heard nationwide. It was more than a viral moment. It was the spark of a movement demanding accountability and respect. For the first time, action followed the outrage. The officers involved were placed on administrative leave, a tangible step signaling that their conduct wouldn't be ignored. It wasn't justice yet, but it was a crack in the armor of institutional denial. The message was clear. There would be consequences. The path toward real accountability had begun, and the public's watchful eyes refused to look away. Instead of stepping onto platforms to speak, Malik chose a different path. He poured his pain and hope into a children's book about bias and bravery. I want to teach our children, he said quietly, that courage isn't just facing fear, it's standing up for truth and kindness. His words reflected resilience, turning trauma into a legacy of education and empowerment. Through this new chapter, Malik aimed to inspire future generations to recognize injustice and foster empathy. The viral incident propelled legislative reform, resulting in a bill soon dubbed Malik's Law. The new law mandated body cameras on all community police officers, a crucial step toward transparency and trust. It symbolized progress born from struggle, showing how one family's ordeal could influence nationwide change. This law stood as a beacon of hope, promising a future where oversight and accountability would protect, rather than endanger, communities of color. The story comes full circle, with Malik sitting beneath the same park tree where the nightmare began, reading his book to his daughters. Their laughter mingled with the gentle breeze, a quiet victory amidst the storm. Here, in this moment, healing blossomed, strength returned. Hope, once fragile, now took root, reminding us all that even after the darkest trials, love endures. Sometimes the world sees you as a threat, but your truth will always speak louder than their fear. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, take a moment to sit with those feelings. It's important to recognize how these experiences shape our world and how we each play a role in changing it. Have you or someone you know faced something like this? Please share your story in the comments below. Opening up helps us build understanding and creates a community where voices can be heard and empathy grows. If you believe stories like this need to be told, please like, share, and subscribe. Every action spreads awareness and helps amplify the voices fighting against racial injustice and discrimination. Remember, your voice can be someone's power. Speaking out matters more than you know.